Good morning, everybody. I would like to make the following statement after the adoption by the Security Council of the Resolution 2328. France and Britain's insistence on presenting and adopting such resolution is just another part of the continued propaganda against Syria and its fight against terrorism. While we respect the Security Council resolutions, we are aware of the real purpose of their efforts, which is to protect the terrorists. And I will explain why later on. Not the Syrian people. Especially after the image become clear and Aleppo has been liberated from terrorist groups. I would like to share with you that right now, the last terrorists in some districts of the eastern part of Aleppo are evacuating their strongholds. And Aleppo this evening will be clean. The Syrian government does not oppose the adoption of any resolution that respects the international humanitarian law and the protection of civilians, or intends to provide civilians with medical and food assistance, or to protect medical and educational facilities. We are saying that because the Syrian government till now is presenting up to 80% of the humanitarian assistance provided to all our people all over Syria, but in particular to the civilians who are still, hopefully this evening there will be no more civilians, but who are still in some districts of the eastern part of Aleppo. The UN is not doing its job correctly. To be factual, these principles are at the core duties of the Syrian government towards its citizens. And it has been doing this over the last 5 years. We oppose the attempts of some member states to draft and submit, under a humanitarian cover, a crafty and vague terms and loose phrases that tolerate more than one interpretation, with the intention of exploiting these resolutions to achieve hidden agendas, to legitimize foreign interference, changing of legitimate governments by force, or even using military force. These kind of resolutions might have a lot of purposes, but the stated humanitarian goal. We all have in mind what they did to Iraq and Libya and elsewhere. Under the cover of humanitarian purposes. In Libya, they wanted to protect the civilians. They destroyed the whole country and transformed Libya into an international hub of terrorism. Iraq, needless to talk about it. The Syrian government, as part of its humanitarian response, has received more than 100,000 civilians who came out of the eastern district of Aleppo through the period from 26 November until the 14th of December. Moreover, the government has provided all the services, needs, and medical care for those civilians. It is necessary to point out that the Syrian government has provided 80%, as I said, of the food and emergency assistance to those families, while the United Nations organizations have only provided 20%, roughly 20%. The Syrian government demands in this regard that the UN aid organizations do their part in helping the Syrian residents of Aleppo, helping in deeds, not in words. The Syrian government has agreed to evacuate the unlawful armed groups and their families from Aleppo. Many people today of the so-called families of the terrorists left the buses transporting them to outside of Aleppo and joined the government's, the Syrian Arab Army, the Syrian Arab Republic Army and the government's areas under the control of the government. Many of their own families decided to leave the buses, and they left, and we have the images and the films and the YouTubes and the WhatsApp and whatever, which proves and corroborates what we are talking about. This is very indicative, ladies and gentlemen. However, the armed terrorist groups repeatedly breached the terms of this agreement, like trying to take a number of prisoners and bodies of martyrs with them, or to carry their medium weapons. According to the agreement with them, the terrorists should have left their strongholds carrying with them their light weapons only, and not taking with them any hostages, any bodies of martyrs. They did not respect these terms of the agreement, and they carried on with them their medium-range weapons and many of the kidnapped and abducted Syrian soldiers and civilians with them, as well as the bodies of too many martyrs. This is the reason why the whole operation got stopped yesterday. Despite of all of this, the Syrian government is still ready to evacuate remaining unlawful armed groups in the terrorist pockets in the eastern part of Aleppo. And it has organized yesterday a convoy to evacuate 3,750 terrorists and their families. Unfortunately, some member states in the Security Council and the mainstream media continue to defend and support the genetically modified armed Syrian opposition, moderate by definition, while turning a blind eye to the crimes committed by them, such as burning the evacuation buses yesterday. I guess you are aware of this. The media told you that the terrorists burned only 5 buses. No, this is not correct. They burned 25 buses and took their drivers hostages, and they killed 3 drivers out of them. And using a 7-year-old girl as a suicide bomber, 7 years old girl as a suicide bomber, at a Damascus police station 2 days ago. I guess you are aware of that too. Instead, France and some other member states in the Council did not say a single word of condemnation of these terrorist attacks against the evacuation buses that were sent to evacuate the sick and wounded from Kafraya and Al-Fu'a. They didn't even say one single word on this little girl, 7 years old, who was sent as a suicide bomber through remote control from outside the precinct, the police precinct. These people inside didn't find enough time for them to issue a condemnation. Despite our belief that some member states within the Council seek to rescue their spoiled moderate terrorists from facing their fate, we are dealing with the adoption of this resolution as a legal and moral test for these countries, as a chance, if you want, for them to prove their good intentions, if they do have any, and their real interest to meet the humanitarian needs of the Syrian people, without any hidden, hostile and intrusive agenda towards the government and the people of Syria. I would like finally to share with you this information. The Syrian competent authorities have gathered information saying that many foreign officers, intelligence and military officers, who are in the eastern part of Aleppo with the terrorist groups, are trying to exit their strongholds in the eastern part of Aleppo. I will say before you their names and their nationalities. Mu'taz Oglakan Oglu, Turkish. David Scott Winner, American. David Shlomo Aram, Israeli. Muhammad Sheikh al-Islam al-Tamimi, Qatari. Muhammad Ahmed al-Sabyan, Saudi. Abdul Mun'im Fahad al-Hreij, Saudi. Ahmed bin Nufal al-Drej, Saudi. Muhammad Hassan al-Subay'i, Saudi. Qasim Saad al-Shumari, Saudi. Ayman Qasim al-Tha'albi, Saudi. Amjad Qasim al-Tirawi, Jordanian. Muhammad al-Shafi'i al-Idrisi, Moroccan. These Syrian moderate opposition individuals who have foreign citizenship and nationalities are trying to escape from the eastern part of Aleppo with the terrorists. And this is why you saw this hysterical move in the council for the last 3 days. Because the main purpose is how to rescue these terrorist foreigners, intelligence officers, from the same countries who pushed for the adoption of the resolution out of Aleppo.
Mr. Ambassador, the UN ambassador says at the highest level, the UN says, Mr. Ambassador, that your government does not allow humanitarian aid delivery into Syria, and then you're saying that the UN is not doing its part to deliver this humanitarian aid. Just two quick questions, Mr. Ambassador. One, are you going to implement this resolution in Syria in full? And two, are you going to let the UN humanitarian aid delivery into Aleppo and other parts of Syria? Thank you.
The provision of the resolution that we have just adopted in the Council has been implemented by the Syrian government for 5 years. So this is not something new for us. On the contrary, we are welcoming the good intentions, if there are any, behind the adoption of this resolution, meaning that we would like to see genuine partners with us to implement the provision of this resolution, because it has always been a one-way ticket while implementing the humanitarian assistance in Syria. It has always been the Syrian government who provides 80% up to the from the overall assessment of the needs. So it is time for those who pretend they have good intentions towards the Syrian people to share with us, with the Syrian government, these burdens, humanitarian burdens. So we are not that sad with this resolution because it is part of our continued daily efforts.
Ambassador, I want to ask a more specific question. Can you tell us, in the next 24 hours, will your government allow the UN observers to enter eastern Aleppo? And does your government guarantees the safety of UN observers when they enter Aleppo?
Hold on. You are reading the map wrongly, my friend. You are reading the map. You are reading the map wrongly, and you didn't read the resolution. Are you not following the events correctly? Are we going to implement the resolution?
Yes.
This is your question?
Are you letting the observers in?
Good, excellent. We are talking about observers who are still there on the spot. We are not talking about observers who will come from Mars or from Jupiter. The resolution talks about observers who are there. ICRC, Syrian Arab Red Crescent, OCHA, United Nations, all of them are there. Nobody else will come from outside of these people who are still there. So we are not talking about forming or establishing a new force coming from outside to replace those who are on the spot. The resolution speaks about the UN as well as the RCRC and the Syrian Red Arab Crescent Association to supervise and monitor the implementation of the resolution. So they are there. They have been implementing the provision of the resolution for years.
Does your government guarantee their safety?
We have guaranteed the safety of the UN staffers for 6 years. 6 years, and none of the UN staffers got killed or wounded or abducted, just for your kind information. And we paid costly for that, because too many of our officers, our humanitarian workers, and our officers got killed because of that.
What's the status of civilians in Fua and Kafraya, and who, according to your government, was responsible for the burning of the buses? Which groups?
The group who burnt the buses is called Saraya al-Tawheed. Saraya al-Tawheed, which is part of Al-Qaeda and Jaysh al-Fatah, affiliated to the Turkish intelligence.
Did anyone get out of the two? I mean, what's the status of people in Fu and Kafraya?
They killed 3 drivers, abducted the remaining 22 other drivers, burned 25 buses, prevented, of course, the evacuation of the wounded people from Kafraya and Al-Fu'a. But today, we have succeeded evacuating hundreds of these wounded people from Kafraya and Al-Fu'a.
Mr. Ambassador, mentioned these names and their nationalities. What are you planning to do with them? Are you going to let them go out? Are you going to arrest them? Because you have all the information, obviously, and you control the area on the ground. So what
we are going to catch them, my friend, and show them to you.
You mean only them, or them and other fighters?
Them? No, I'm talking about the foreigners, intelligence officers, whose name I have mentioned a few minutes ago. You wanted to see them? We will show them to you.
Mr. Ambassador, a lot of buses that were supposedly burned in eastern Aleppo were
It's
burned.
not supposedly. Haven't you seen the pictures?
No, I'm supposedly. I'm saying because they were not burned by the people you claim were burned by. People say that they were burned by.
Forget about people.
Like
Forget about the people. I have the film of the burning of the buses with the slogans of the leader who burned the buses, claiming Allahu Akbar and identifying himself. We have the statement who issued. Come on, my friend. Come on. Give me a break. Give me a break, please.
Mr. Ambassador, you named off a whole list of individuals who you claim are
nice people, yeah.
Are intelligence agents from
No, they are Syrian moderate opposition.
Right. Can
genetically modified.
Are they still in eastern Aleppo?
Yes.
They are still there.
Yes. And this is why you saw this hysterical move during the weekend by France and Britain and the Americans, because they wanted to guarantee their safety out of the eastern part of Aleppo.
Ambassador, how have you been able to name them as you do now?
We don't have strong intelligence services. Thank you so much.